So today I thought I'd show you a few of the little problems that you get with tanks and aquariums, because sometimes it doesn't all go absolutely perfectly and you do have to problem solve some of the tanks some of the time. This one, for example, is Geralt's tank, and there he is over there in his little cave corner. He quite likes it in that section. It's a little bit darker than the rest of the tank, so he hides there during the day and then comes out towards the evening. But if you notice over here, you can see that we have a little bit of blue-green algae, which is cyanobacteria. There's a zebra danio there saying hello. So one of the main issues, I have two main issues with this tank. One is caused by Geralt himself, and that is quite a lot of the time he actually pulls up some of the plants. So I don't know whether we can get a picture here, as you can actually see that the roots of that Varrosenelia is pulled up slightly, and that's just through him moving about and kicking stuff up. The substrate's not particularly deep, and in fact you can see that a bit better over here. We did have a plant there next to that Varrosenelia, but he did repetitively pull that up. There's actually aquasoil in bags underneath there, which is hidden by the sand, but it does come up kind of like 2/3 of the way up that sand, so there's only really a centimetre or so at the most of sand on top of that. So that's easily solved, because you just use the tweezers and put them back in and hope that they root well before. But the cyanobacteria I'm going to have a think about. Effectively, there's several methods that people recommend. One that I'm not going to try is blackout, as cyanobacteria actually do photosynthesize. So one of the things you can do is you can surround the whole tank in black, so black bin liners for example, and leave that for 4 or 5 days, and the cyanobacteria can't actually photosynthesize, so it tends to die back. But that is quite an intensive way of dealing with things, and obviously, as you can see, the size of the tank is quite significant. So I don't really want it covered in black bin bags for several days. So there's a couple of other things. I mean, effectively the reason why I think we've got cyanobacteria in this tank where we don't with any of the other tanks is because this is very low nutrient. There's not really much nutrients at all beneath the sand, and here you can see actually a little bit better the cyanobacteria there. Generally the plants mostly don't tend to have too much, but I have started noticing this plant here is starting to get some on its leaves, and there's a little bit of hair algae there you can see on one of the leaves. Now, I say it's a low nutrient tank. Actually, it's dirty, because Geralt, being a predatory critter, actually eats quite a lot and subsequently does his business quite a lot. Just going to see if I could get a shot of his face there. There he is. Hello. But as you can see, there's a lot of different places that collect muck, and the only flow we've got is right at the very top from the waterfall there. So actually there's not a lot of flow. You get a little bit there but when you come up to the end here, there's pretty much nothing. One of the other reasons why we're getting cyanobacteria in this is the substrate. We have got sand, and sand compacts, doesn't have a lot of space underneath for oxygen, so actually means that it provides the perfect environment for the cyanobacteria to reproduce. So there's not much I can do about sand. Obviously gravel is not an ideal for axolotls because they do have a tendency to eat it, and that means unfortunately that they can get impacted where they get stones stuck in their belly, which means that it can make them quite poorly. So one of the things that's been recommended, particularly if you've not got a high lot of nutrients for the plants, is low nitrogen has a tendency to cause the cyanobacteria blooms. So dosing with a nitrogen fertiliser is one of the recommended options. So I'm going to give that a go. They recommend trying to get it up to 0.3 for a couple of weeks. I don't actually have a fertiliser at the moment that is a nitrogen fertiliser. The leaf zone that I've got is mainly a potassium based fertiliser. So that's something that I do need to get, but I need to do a little bit of research. It's one of the main nitrogen fertilisers that you can get, has a lot of iron in them, and I just want to make sure that actually that's going to be safe for this little turnip here. Hello you! Now I'm sorry for the reflections in this is quite a light room, but we'll try and stand in a way that means that you can actually see what's going on. Now the second problem that's quite easy to happen is a dirty bottom, to put it in no lighter terms. But essentially the bottom of this tank is quite dirty, and as you can see it's quite a significantly planted tank, so actually getting anything like oh hello baby shark, getting any siphon in here to actually pick up the dirt can be quite difficult. So it starts to get quite mucky just from general debris, and this is from, you know, the feeding of the fish, all the waste that the critters produce, including the snails. And what we don't have in this tank is any shrimp, unfortunately. So you can resolve that by having a slightly better flow in the tank, but with the way that this tank's set up, you can't really get the flow down the bottom. However, in this setup, it's not really causing a huge amount of problems. So doing the water testing comes out with pretty much perfect water parameters. I believe it's a heavily planted tank, so essentially whatever is down there actually makes its way into the substrate eventually. I've just spotted baby shark again. There he is. Hello. You can see he's got a little bit of black on him now, on his side. He's actually starting to colour up. They say he. I've got no idea what gender he is at the moment. But yeah, this doesn't really cause this tank much of a problem. The dirt eventually makes its way through the sand and gravel substrate, and the plants use it. We've got quite a few plants that root in the substrate in here. We've also got quite a few plants that are epiphytes and actually take up any kind of stuff from the water column. So it actually, while I say it's a problem, it isn't particularly for this tank. And you can see another issue that some people might have is jumping fish. We always leave a good, that's a couple of inches at the top from the water, to make sure that if the fish do jump, they're unlikely to come out. We've only ever had one of the cardinal tetras jump out of here. That was quite early days, and I'd just filled the tank a little bit too high. The flow on the filter was quite high, so I think they were playing in the high flow, and he just took a leap that was a little bit too far. But this tank's doing really well. We've obviously only had one platy fry survive at the moment, but we're certainly not trying to breed them. We know it's an environment that's got a lot of predatory fish in there, so we knew that the platy babies weren't going to necessarily survive, and therefore we're just kind of seeing what happens, see who survive. It works out quite well because it's not the most massive tank in the world. So if we got too many babies, then we don't really have anywhere to put them, so it's nice that the natural order of things means that only the odd, well, one so far has survived. You can see some nice chasing behaviour there. So that is the smallest male chasing around a couple of females. That is the larger male chasing around the other female. So it's a nice little tank. So while I said there is a problem in the dirty substrate, actually for this setup it doesn't matter so much. It's a good established ecosystem now, and it seems to be perfectly happy. So this is what was previously known as the ecosystem tank. Actually, I have no idea what it should be renamed as now, but it will stay the ecosystem tank for now, even though the Rapa Nui jungle is actually also an ecosystem tank. The fish are settling in quite nicely. They do like this shaded area down here quite a bit, particularly the barbs. This is their favourite spot. And mostly the issues that we've been having this tank are based on the fact that it's quite a new setup. So what you can see, or hopefully here, is that we've had a little bit of crypt melt. Crypts don't really like being moved, and they do have a tendency to melt quite quickly, but as you can see actually back there, it's got a couple of little new shoots that are growing up, so I think it should recover quite happily. Similarly, the Braziliensis were also suffering a little bit from moving. I think some of that actually might be nutrient deficiencies, so I need to keep an eye on that and see if I can pop in something. We do have obviously aqua soil below here, and I did try to pop in some nutrient tablets when I planted it initially, but it may just not be quite enough, or it may just be catching up after being moved. The worst one we've got at the moment is this plant here, which, as you can see, has not really liked being in this position. It's lost all of its leaves down here and melted, but it does look as if it's starting to grow up from the bottom, so I'm going to leave it in there now in the hopes that it might recover, but if it doesn't, we'll cut it back and plant something else in its place. But otherwise we're looking good. We did lose one shrimp, unfortunately. Our water is really soft, so it's actually quite difficult for the shrimp because they don't really have much in terms of calcium in the water. But there is a nice saddled Rilly shrimp there. Here's one of the ones that has survived. There he is, picking up all the rubbish off all the leaves. And we have a second release shrimp that has survived, and we've still got a crystal red in here somewhere. But they do actually prefer, there's a gap behind that rock where they like hiding, so you don't always see them, but it is nice to spot them every now and again. And for some reason this time round, the snails have absolutely loved our plants. So there's some nice big holes in there this time round, and hopefully they will recover. I might need to trim those kind of dead leaves off to try and just help the rest of the plant grow, but otherwise it's looking quite good. As I said, it's early days for this tank, so we'll see how well it establishes itself. For the first few days we did have what looked like an oily slick on the top of the water, which we don't know, it's cleared up quite nicely. I did put some new biological media in the back, and that might have been why. I did rinse it, but if it's got bits and pieces left, it might be in there. But also, if you notice here, previously the filter sponge was pushed down below the inflow gaps. However, unfortunately, the little chili rasboras were so small that all 6 of them got themselves stuck in that filter section. So all I did was put some filter floss at the bottom of the filter sponge, and then put the filter sponge on top, and that raised the filter sponge slightly higher, so you still got the filtration through, but none of the little chili rasboras could actually get in there. And they can be a little bit difficult to see, but there is one of them darting away, and they've actually been a lot more confident in this tank than they were in the other one, despite there being more open space in here. But that's most of the problems that I've experienced with these tanks at the moment. Pretty much the Rapa Nui tank has been easy to leave on its own. This one's going to need a closer eye over the next few weeks while it establishes, and we'll see if we can get some nitrogen fertiliser for the waterfall tank for Geralt, so that we can try and get rid of that cyanobacteria, and if not, we'll have to try a different method. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe. I'll try and put some more updates soon. But that's it for today.